Imagine a place where the air itself is a death sentence. A massive, gothic structure, sitting isolated on a lonely, windswept hill, designed to keep a terrible secret contained within its stone walls. Imagine thousands of people, all suffering from the same incurable, agonizing disease, essentially imprisoned, waiting for a miracle that would never arrive. This is not a work of fiction. This is the dark and disturbing reality of one of the most haunted places on Earth. This is the story of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium and the horrifying secret hidden deep beneath its foundations. This is the true story of the Death Tunnel. Welcome back. Tonight, we are traveling to the heart of Louisville, Kentucky, to open the case file on a landmark that has become synonymous with human suffering and the supernatural. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Today, it stands as a decaying monument to a bygone era of medicine. A place where shadow figure encounters and disembodied screams are the norm. But to truly understand the horror that saturates this property, we must go back to the early 20th century. We must look past the modern-day ghost hunts and into the desperate eyes of the White Plague victims. We must uncover the reasons why this sanatorium needed a secret way to dispose of its dead. This is the dark side of American medical history. This is the horror of the incurable. To understand the scale of the nightmare that unfolded at Waverly Hills, we have to understand the terror of tuberculosis in the early 1900s. They called it the White Plague. It was a silent, agonizing executioner, highly contagious, and it consumed its victims from the inside out. You began with a persistent, hacking cough that never seemed to go away. Then came the fever, the night sweats, and the profound, bone-deep fatigue. Your body would slowly start to waste away, your skin turning a ghostly, transparent white. And then the signature symptom, the blood. You would cough up bright red arterial blood, a physical sign that your lungs were dissolving within your own chest. There was no cure, no antibiotics, no vaccines. If you contracted tuberculosis, your only hope was your own immune system, and for most, that was not enough. The disease was spreading like wildfire through the packed, unsanitary urban centers of America. Whole families were being wiped out. The public was terrified. The infected were seen not as patients, but as pariahs. Monsters carrying a death sentence that they could pass to anyone with a single breath. The government needed a solution, and the solution was isolation. In 1910, on a sprawling, isolated piece of farmland known as Waverly Hill, a small wooden sanatorium was constructed. It was supposed to be a place of rest and recovery. The medical theory of the day was simple. Fresh air, sunlight, and nutritious food were the only treatments But tuberculosis did not care about theories. The wooden structure was immediately overwhelmed by the sheer number of infected patients. By 1924, the government realized they needed something much, much larger. And so, the construction of the massive 4-story Gothic brick sanatorium we see today began. It was designed to house over 400 patients, a self-contained city of the damned, isolated from the rest of Louisville by miles of open land. When the massive new sanatorium opened its heavy wooden doors, it was hailed as a miracle of modern medicine. The architecture was specifically designed for fresh air treatment. The entire length of the building featured massive, open-air screened porches where patients were kept in their beds all day, and often all night, exposed to the elements. They believed that the freezing winter air of Kentucky would somehow freeze out the bacteria in their lungs. Imagine thousands of people, all shivering uncontrollably under thin blankets in sub-zero temperatures, convinced that their suffering was their only path to survival. The daily routine at Waverly Hills was a grotesque parody of life. In the beginning, the staff desperately tried to maintain morale. But as the years dragged on and the body count began to rise, the hopeful atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a deep, suffocating sense of despair. The sanatorium was a prison. Patients were not allowed to leave. Their contact with the outside world was minimal, restricted to rare, supervised visits that often left them more depressed than before. For many, the only future they could look forward to was a slow, agonizing death. You could feel the paranoia, the exhaustion, the deep, chemical sense of dread that saturated every square inch of the building. The four walls of your hospital room were not a safe cage. They were the boundaries of your entire existence. The only sounds were the rattling, erratic coughs of thousands of people, a dark, repetitive chant inside your skull, drowning out your own thoughts. As the epidemic reached its peak, the death toll at Waverly Hills began to soar to astronomical numbers. Some estimates suggest that as many as 63,000 people died within these walls. Though historical records are incomplete, but the exact number does not matter. The reality was that bodies were piling up faster than the sanatorium could process them. This creates a serious problem for the administration. Maintaining the patient's morale was critical, as stress and despair were known to worsen the physical symptoms of tuberculosis. If a patient looked out their window and saw a continuous procession of hearses driving down the main hill, carrying away the bodies of their friends and roommates, they would lose all hope. Despair would settle into their bones, and they would stop fighting. The administration needed a way to manage the dead without alerting the living. They needed a secret exit, and so they decided to repurpose an existing structure. The death tunnel. Originally, the tunnel was built as a maintenance shaft. It was a perfectly straight 5-100-and-20-5-foot concrete chute that ran diagonally down the entire height of the hill, connecting the sanatorium to the boiler room and railway station at the bottom. Its purpose was to transport coal and supplies up to the main building, protecting the staff from the harsh weather. But as the White Plague victims continued to accumulate, its purpose was changed. This was an operation of chilling efficiency. When a patient died, usually in the early, silent hours of the morning, their body was not taken down the main hallway. Instead, the staff would quietly wheel the gurney toward a discreet, unmarked door on the first floor. This door opened directly onto the entrance of the concrete chute. The body was transferred to a specialized, heavy-duty wheeled cart designed to manage the steep, diagonal descent. There was no ceremony, no final respect. No family members were present. The body was secured to the cart, and then a single staff member would pull a large lever, beginning the slow, controlled descent into the pitch-black darkness. The only sounds in that tunnel were the heavy, metallic clinking of the specialized braking system and the oppressive, suffocating silence of the ancient, cold earth. The descent was a metaphor for their journey. They were being lowered into the abyss, forgotten by the world that was too terrified to face them. At the bottom of the 5-100-and-20-5-foot chute, the bodies were unloaded. A different set of staff members would be waiting. They would load the deceased onto a waiting train car or hearse, discreetly transporting them to a local crematorium or cemetery, far away from the prying eyes and sensitive ears of the living patients on the hill. The process was methodical, clinical. It was a medical industrial complex for the dead, a secret purgatory designed to manage the human cost of the White Plague with maximum discretion. But the horror of Waverly Hills does not end in the damp, cold, diagonal concrete chute. The death tunnel is just one specific breed of nightmare that haunts this property. Let us move much deeper into the absolute heart of the suffering. Let us move to the 4th floor. The 4th floor was reserved for the most severe, near-death cases. If you were moved to the 4th floor, you knew your time was up. This was where the experimental treatments were conducted. The doctors, desperate and working on the absolute edge of their knowledge, would attempt radical, incredibly invasive surgeries that often did more harm than good. One such treatment was thoracoplasty. This was not a delicate procedure. The surgeon would make a large incision on the patient's back and then proceed to physically break and remove several ribs, collapsing the chest wall in on itself. The theory was that by collapsing the lung, it would give it a chance to rest and heal. But the reality was grotesque mutilation. Imagine being awake, the only anesthetic, a small amount of local numbing agent, and a deep, chemical haze of laudanum or ether, listening to the violent, cracking sound of your own bones being snapped like dried twigs. Many patients did not survive the thoracoplasty. Those who did were permanently deformed, struggling to breathe for the rest of their short lives. But perhaps the most chilling story to emerge from the fourth floor is not a medical procedure, but a violation. A story that reminds us that the primary threat in these dark, forgotten, and deadly corners of American history is often not supernatural, but terrifyingly human. The story of Room 50. Room 502 is not a patient room. It is a utility space located on the roof near the screened open-air porch of the fourth floor. In 1928, the sanatorium was rocked by a scandal that was desperately hushed up. A nurse, described as quiet and dedicated, was found deceased within room 5B2. She had not contracted tuberculosis. She had taken her own life. The folklore surrounding this nurse is a complex, terrifying web of speculation and dread. Some say she was pregnant by one of the doctors, a deep violation of professional ethics, and when she was abandoned, she could not face the social consequences. Others say she was overwhelmed by the sheer, concentrated essence of human suffering that she witnessed every single day, and the despair finally broke her mind. We will never truly know the reason, but we do know that on a cold, silent night in 1928, she climbed the utility stairs to room 502, tied a heavy industrial electrical cord to a ceiling pipe, and stepped off the wooden stool. She was found the next morning by an oblivious janitor. The administration, true to their disciplined nature, locked the door, ordered the janitor to never speak of this again, and essentially erased her from the records. But you cannot erase energy. Today, room 502 is hailed as one of the most active parts of the entire sanatorium. Visitors have reported a deep physical sense of crushing despair and isolation upon stepping into the small, freezing room. Many have seen a shadowy figure of a woman in white hanging from the ceiling, a phantom shape that vanishes into the jaundiced yellow glow of the small utility light. Others have reported hearing a soft, weeping woman's voice that drops an octave, becoming a guttural growl that sounds like it is coming from the bottom of a well, demanding that they leave her in peace. But let us venture back to the death tunnel, because this, the physical structure of the concrete chute itself, is the final reservoir of memory for the horror that saturated this property. Over 63,000 people, mostly solo travelers and runaways who had no family to claim them, went completely missing from their normal lives and were compressed into the cold, damp concrete of this tunnel. Their physical bodies are gone, but their residual energy, the pure, concentrated essence of their terror and their final moments of existence, remain. Visitors today will tell you that the death tunnel possesses its own architecture of fear. It is not just a dark corridor. When you step onto the steep concrete incline, the perspective changes entirely. The physical proportions of the tunnel seem slightly off. The ceiling feels far too low, pressing down on you. The walls seem far too thick. The jaundiced yellow light from the modern utility lamps seems to be actively consumed by the ancient, oppressive darkness that clings to the concrete like a mold. As you begin the 5-100- and -20-5-foot diagonal descent, the silence becomes absolutely suffocating. It is not a peaceful silence. It is a heavy, expectant, suffocating silence. A silence that is not empty. A silence that is heavy, waiting for you to step off the modern maintenance walkway. And when you do, when you stand directly in the center of the dark chute, you hear it. The slow, deliberate, heavy, scuffing sound, like a heavy work boot dragging slowly against the concrete walkway. But it is not a phantom shape walking away. It is the sound of the wheeled carts, a slow, controlled, metallic clinking as they make their endless descent, carrying another forgotten white plague victim to the abyss. Many people have reported horrifying encounters of waking up in the dead middle of the night to find that things in their locked sanatorium tour room have changed. A heavy brass lamp has been moved from the nightstand to the bathroom counter. A single, filthy armchair has been pushed into the far corner, facing the door. A large, wet, muddy footprint on the white bathroom tiles that absolutely does not match their own shoe size. The horrifying, soul-crushing realization hits them. While they were deeply asleep, completely vulnerable, dreaming of a safe, civilized ghost hunt, a stranger unlocked a hidden maintenance door. Maybe they just came through the window, unlatching it with terrifying silence, too, and stood directly over their bed in the pitch-black dark, just watching them breathe. This is the ultimate horror of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. The profound isolation is the ultimate weapon these places possess. When you are checked into a cheap, roadside log cabin motel with the flickering neon sign, or a massive, decaying sanatorium on a lonely hill, you are completely, utterly disconnected from the safety fabric of modern society. If you scream at the top of your lungs, the only thing that hears your cries for help is the empty, black highway and the wind howling through the dead trees. Your primal instinct, the ancient reptilian part of your brain that evolved over millions of years to keep you alive in the dark, is screaming at you to get back in your car, lock the doors, and drive away. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium stands today as a decaying monument to a bygone era of medicine. A place where shadow figure encounters and disembodied screams are the norm. But to truly understand the horror, we must look past the modern-day ghost hunt and into the desperate eyes of the White Plague victims. We must uncover the reasons why this sanatorium needed a secret way to dispose of its dead. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, one fact remains. Over 63,000 people walked into this Gothic structure, and, against all odds, they did not walk out. They were lowered. Sleep well.